Carl, Communications Minister Stephen Conroy has accused the Murdoch-owned media of running a campaign against the Gillard government. And Senator Conroy joins me now. Good morning to you, Senator.
Good to be with you.
Why do you think News Limited is running a campaign against your government?
Well, I think I was very specifically talking about the Daily Telegraph yesterday, and News Limited and the Daily Telegraph say they've got journalistic ethics, and here are the company ethics on how we'll report news. And what you've got with the Daily Telegraph is it's openly saying we're running a campaign in a whole range of areas, and they're demanding an early election. They know best what's for this country. Ignore the fact we had an election last year, and they have demanded a new poll. So they are targeting the government with a systematic campaign on a range of issues. It's not just climate change, on a range of issues, demanding a new election.
You don't think The Australian is running the same campaign?
I think The Australian has been engaged in some over-the-top reporting over a number of months, and I've talked about that last year, but specifically at the moment, the Daily Telegraph is probably the most excessive in terms of its lack of balance and bias in its coverage. Newspoll
and Nielsen both have your primary vote below 30% at the moment. Wouldn't it be fair to suggest that they're just reflecting readers' opinions?
No, I think when you're orchestrating and demanding a new election, I think that takes it to a different level.
You don't think a lot of voters are asking the same thing?
Well, I think voters elected a minority government last year, and the Gillard government is engaged in major economic reform. And in the past, you've seen major reforms, governments have introduced them, have taken a hit. There's short-term pain.
But never figures as low as we're seeing at the moment.
Well, I think if you go back just a few years, you'll see that the opposition, when Kevin Rudd was at his peak, was on about the same sort of figures. So these figures bounce around. The electorate is far more volatile in the last few years. But when a government is engaged in serious economic reform, like the Gillard government is, in the mining tax, in the carbon tax, in reforming telecommunications, in bringing the budget back to surplus, you expect that you'll take some short-term pain in the polls. And yes, we are taking a short-term pain in the polls at the moment.
Are you shocked by how low those numbers are?
Well, obviously, no government, no politician likes to see numbers those low. But what you'll see from Julia Gillard, the Prime Minister, is a steely determination to do what's right for the country. We need these reforms for the long-term benefit of the country.
Is Julia Gillard's leadership safe at this point?
Absolutely. Julia Gillard, I think people underestimate Julia Gillard's steely determination to do what's right for the country.
As Communications Minister, you would know with the onset of the internet, bloggers, that newspapers, they're no longer the first draft of history. Instead, they've had to adapt and survive, and as a result, they have become more partisan and more proactive to get the voice out there. As Communications Minister, would you not welcome a broader set of voices out there?
Well, more diversity is always a good thing, and I think you're right. I think that newspapers are being forced to adapt to the internet age, and you're seeing them having to become more shrill to attract attention when they're competing with a whole range of new voices that are in the blogosphere. So I think your observation is absolutely right, but there's still a requirement under journalistic ethics to provide balance, and that's the complaint that I've been making and a number of my colleagues have been making. There is a responsibility to provide both sides of an argument, and when you decide we're going to campaign against something, by definition, you're dropping off that obligation to provide the balance.
Well, on that issue of balance, back in 2007, both the Telegraph and the Australian endorsed Kevin Rudd. The Labor leader did not endorse John Howard, the coalition leader. Critics of yours say that it's only because these papers have turned against you that you have a problem with it.
Look, that's not the case at all. The editorial position in the lead up to an election or the day before an election has changed over many years and will continue to do so. What you're seeing is a systematic campaign to demand a new election from the Daily Telegraph. It's saying, forget what the Australian public decided last year, we've decided you need a new election.
OK, Senator Conroy, we very much appreciate you coming in this